What's up, guys? My name is Guadagni with 5 Tool Sports Science. Today, we are going to be talking about how to increase your velocity in 90 days. Yes, this is very clickbaity, I must acknowledge. I'm not a big clickbaity guy, but yes, you can improve velocity in 90 days. All right, so not everyone is going to be able to gain 5+ miles per hour in 90 days. We're going to talk about that. We're going to explain a little bit about it. Another thing I want you guys to know is 1/3 of a mile per hour a month means that you are flying. All right. So if you're gaining just 0.33 miles per hour a month, at the end of a year, you will have 4 miles per hour gained. And so what you guys need to understand is like, I'm not big into like hey, in just 3 months, we're going to be gaining, 5 or 10 miles per hour. That's just like very marketing gimmick. It's not really the reality of what happens when we're trying to gain pitching velocity. You have to have realistic expectations. So just like when people are trying to build lean muscle mass or something, if you're gaining 1 to 2 pounds of lean muscle mass in a month, you're really flying. Okay. And so with velocity, if you're gaining just 0.33 or even 0.25 miles per hour in a month, you're doing really good. And if you stretch that out over a year for 0.33, that would be 4 miles per hour in 1 year. And that would be, for most people, I think you could be pretty happy with those gains. And that's some like realistic expectations. Now that changes based off of velocity tier, which is going to be our next point. But last final thing, a lot of velocity gains are going to be dependent on your current tier, how efficient you are with your mechanics, and how what your body is like at that moment. So your height, your weight, your mechanical efficiency on the mound, your athleticism, and then also your mobility. Okay. So know your velocity tier. This is the big point, kind of like what I was talking about. So like if you are in the 70s, you've got big room for improvement with basic strength and mechanics work. It's going to be, typically you get a lot of high school guys in this range where you just get them into basic strength and conditioning. You kind of teach them some of the basics of mechanics, and they're just going to gain velocity. In 90 days, they can make improvements. This is, you'll find the guys, in the 70s and even some guys in the 80s who in 90 to 120 days, 3 to 4 months of training, they can make that 5-mile-per-hour jump. Okay. That's not unheard of. That's not unrealistic. Guys in the 90s, improvements become much harder and the gains are a lot slower. So if you're in the 90s, like if you're throwing 90 miles per hour and you are trying to gain 5 miles per hour, it's probably not going to happen in 90 days. Now, in 90 days, for a guy that's in the 90s, a realistic expectation is going back to that like 0.33. If you're gaining just 0.33 in a month, that would be 1 mile per hour in 90 days. And for a guy to go from 90 to 91, that's not a bad jump. If you stretch that out over the year for a 90 guy with that 0.33 gain, if you go from 90 to 94 in 1 year, hey man, I think most guys would be really happy with that. Like, go ahead and mention that in the comments. If you're a 90 guy and you gain 4 miles per hour in a year and you went from 90 to 94, I think you're going to be pretty stoked. Okay. 95 plus guys, this is where your margins get real thin. Okay. So, gaining 1 mile per hour, maybe even over, 6 months to a year, a guy might be happy with that. So like if you're 95 and you get up to like a 96 or a 97, you gain 2 miles per hour in a year. That's really good gains. Okay. So you can see how each tier you have your room for improvement goes down. It just gets harder. You get into a pyramid of dudes where it's like you got your 70s guys, you've got your 80s guys, you've got your 90 guys, and then you got those 95 plus at the top of the pyramid, and it's just a smaller and smaller population of people that are doing that as you get to the higher, 95 plus range. Okay, so assessment and reassessment. This is going to be absolutely critical. Okay. So you have to assess first. You have to look at your motion capture of your pitching mechanics, mobility, strength and power testing. And look, this is like, I have a motion capture rig here at my facility. If you're just watching at home, you might not have stuff like this, but there's still a ton of stuff that you can do, like functional movement screens, vertical jump testing. There's a lot of stuff that you can do at home that you don't need a fancy, pitching mechanics lab to be able to do these assessments. Okay, that's just the value of hiring a coach, is you're going to get the access to some of that stuff. Then you need to identify what's holding you back from your assessments. Okay, is it movement quality? Is it mobility? Is it strength? Is it power? Is it mechanical sequencing on the mound? Like how you're sequencing your energy flow on the mound. Okay, and then you need to retest. every 4 weeks to see if you're making progress, right? I say you always need to assess, you never want to guess, all right? You always got to be reassessing to see if we're actually making progress, if we're actually going in the right direction. What can be frustrating for a lot of guys is you can be, training and think you're doing all the right things, and then, you're not getting the results that you want. So reassessment and assessments is what allows us to see where you're starting at baseline and are we making progress as we're going along, okay? Um, Next point, building a periodized training program. Okay, so don't just randomly go about your strength and conditioning with no plan. That's one of the big mistakes that guys can make. So if you've got 90 days, you really need to have a set plan and be operating in blocks, training blocks, periodization, and using deload weeks in your training. Okay, so what that might look like is like something like 4 weeks where we're going to work on maybe it's a hypertrophy phase, maybe 4 weeks of max strength, maybe 4 weeks of, speed and explosiveness type work. And then in those 4 week blocks, you got to have at least a week where you're doing some deload. Like another big mistake that guys will make is you guys are just trying to push yourself super hard in your training. But you're not giving any deload, and that can actually start hurting you. That's when you get into overtraining and too much fatigue, and you start to regress. So you need to be programming in deload weeks so that your body gets a chance to catch back up. Usually the times after those deload weeks when you're training for velocity is when guys are going to get a bump in their velocity, because the body feels fresh. You just put a bunch of stress on it. Your body now catches back up, and then boom, all of a sudden you hit a PR in your pitching velocity. Okay. Um, Prioritize your individual weaknesses. Again, going back to those assessments, you have to know what you need to work on specifically. So you're going to get usually like a simplified way of talking about this is like there can be two types of guys. Like you can be the guy who's much stronger than he is fast, or you can be the guy who's much faster than he is strong. Okay, so you have to understand what type you are. This is pretty basic stuff though too. Like if you are a guy that you're spending all this time in the weight room, you're super strong, but you're not throwing hard. Hey, guess what? You probably need to work more on the speed and explosion side of things and the elasticity and working on movement quality and mechanical sequencing. If you're a guy who's a lot faster than he is strong, then you're probably going to benefit from hitting the weight room and nutrition, probably building lean muscle mass, getting stronger in the weight room. That's going to benefit you a lot more than going towards the other side of the spectrum, working on a lot more speed and stuff like that. Okay. Work on rotational power. That's another key point. No matter what block you're in, you got to be working on rotational power. Most strength and conditioning programs for throwers are very generic and kind of cookie cutter, and it focuses a lot on the compound lifts. Like think of things like squats, deadlifts, bench press, power cleans. Almost training like a football player, if you will, and you're missing out on a lot of that transverse plane movements where you're working in rotational, which is so big for throwers. You've got to be training rotational strength, speed, and power, okay? And deceleration. Include sprinting and plyometrics weekly. Again, based off of your block, what you're trying to focus on. If you're focusing on max strength, a good rule of thumb is like the 1/3, 2/3 rule. So like if it's a max strength phase, it'll be 2/3 strength to 1/3 working on your explosiveness and speed type stuff. Okay, but you still need to be working, adding in athletic type movements, which is going to be your sprints, your plyometrics. Okay. Throwing program design. So address your throwing program design needs to be addressing your mechanical efficiencies, right? So if you have certain areas in your mechanics that you need to improve, hip to shoulder separation, back leg acceleration, front leg deceleration, your arm path, there's just key points in the delivery that you might be doing poorly that biomechanically map to more velocity. You got to work on those in your throwing program. So make sure that your throwing program design is addressing those weaknesses. So use constraint drills, med balls, and if you're in a, you're trying to gain velocity like a 90 days, say it's like a summer, like we're heading into the summer right now, you got 90 days, you're trying to gain velocity, you might want to consider some weighted balls. Now, that's a whole topic for itself. I'm not going to go that deep into it, but if you're going to do weighted balls, please, 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 first get into some dynamometer testing to see if your arm has the strength to actually handle that training a big thing that guys will do is they'll jump right into a weighted ball program and they're like 15, 16 years old. You haven't developed enough strength and athleticism and attacked most of those low-hanging fruits, and you just jump right into this high-intensity weighted ball program, and you're gonna end up getting yourself hurt if you do that. If you're considering weighted balls, make sure that your arm strength is in the right place, that you have enough strength in your arm to handle the amount of force and torque that you're about to put it through with a weighted ball program. So really make sure you know what you're doing with that, guys. I believe, in weighted balls. I know that you're going to be able to increase you're going to be able to increase your pitching velocity with weighted balls, but just be very careful about your approach in doing it. You need to test your arm strength levels to know where they're at, and then be using that data, testing your arm strength levels. I would almost say daily if you have it, with the dynamometer, so that you know when to push and when to pull back, which is the next point, using data to schedule high intent days and recovery days. So you can see in the chart, this is kind of like an example. If you're getting, you know, where your strength levels are high, these are good days that you can push forward and try to go for some velo. Then what happens is you run into fatigue and your arms drop, and that's a day where you're going to want to deload. You're going to want to work more on recovery type stuff to allow your body to catch back up. You don't want to go into a high velocity throwing day when your arm strength is low. Okay, so that's how you're using data to program for your throwing days, especially if you're doing weighted balls. Okay, or you're in a velo phase. Okay, improve your mobility. This is huge. So, looking at thoracic spine, shoulders, hips, ankle mobility, all of the key components in the body, they need to be moving good. If you have any weaknesses in the kinetic chain, it's usually going to show up in your pitching mechanics. All right, so you want to be addressing and finding where you have limitations. These are some of the big ones that are going to affect gaining velocity in 90 days. Okay, so you want to do soft tissue work, which is going to be like myofascial release stuff with like a lacrosse ball or a foam roller, where you're working on soft tissue, corrective movements, and strengthening exercises. Okay, so like corrective movements are going to be kind of stuff like this, overhead squat here, doing back bridges, and then you're pairing that with strength. So using movements where you can add load and start building strength in those ranges is some of the most effective ways that I've found to really gain good mobility that translates onto the mound. Okay. Yeah, so mobility is the foundation for efficient movement, and it's really helpful for on-mound velocity. Okay, fuel the process with nutrition. This is one that, I mean, I can say this over and over and over again. If you watch my videos, we're constantly harping on this. This really separates the men from the boys when it comes to training, because it's freaking hard to do nutrition. Okay, so here's like an example day of eating, of looking at macronutrients, looking at calorie intake, and you can see, certain days where other days where you're trying to hit a target goal of 3,000 for this athlete. So you need to know what your calorie intake needs to be. You need to know what your macros, your protein, carbs, fat intake needs to be. And you need to be hitting it. You got to be hitting that every single day, guys. This is the hard one. I get it. It's breakfast, it's lunch, it's dinner, it's snacks. It's hard to eat to gain lean muscle mass. But if you're serious about gaining velocity in 90 days, this is non-negotiable. It's going to help you recover faster. It's going to help you build that lean muscle mass, and ultimately it's going to lead to more velocity on the mound. So what I always tell with guys with this is, if like, hey man, if in 90 days, if you were going to gain 2 miles per hour, if you're just training, that's great. But if you were going to gain 5 miles per hour, but you were really going in on your nutrition, you're going to want to go in on your nutrition to gain that extra miles per hour, right? So you have to look at it like that. You, in 90 days, if that cost you 3 miles per hour, I guarantee you would go all in on your nutrition. And I promise you guys, this is the unsexy stuff, but this yields some of the biggest gains in your velocity, is focusing in on your nutrition. All right, and then also make sure you're sleeping, guys. That's just a performance enhancement. Okay, final message. 90-day gains are possible, especially in the 70s to 80s mile per hour brackets. The 90s to 95s, it gets harder. It takes assessments, it takes targeted training, and it takes consistency. Okay, and then remember, if you're gaining 1/3 of a mile per hour a month, that is 4 miles per hour in a year, and you're absolutely flying if you do that. Okay, so have some realistic expectations of what it looks like to gain velocity. So yeah, that's everything I got. Give it a like, a subscribe, and a follow, guys. Appreciate you guys watching if you watched all the way to the end, and I hope it helps you guys out. All right.